friends, it's Timon. We are back with a new video. And we're going to react to Thomas DeLauer. That's right, his new video he just posted. This fitness slave. Anyways, let's hear what the fitness slave has to say. Thomas DeLauer says the 6 proven ways to build muscle quickly and easier. There's only one way, but okay.
There's more than one way to build muscle. That is the good news. Now it all...
No, there's only one way. There's only one way to build muscle. You damage it. And how much damage that muscle occurs for it to build, I cannot tell you how much damage you're making there. It depends on what you're doing, your exercise, and what you're doing. What modality are you using there? If it's a small amount of damage, it may just repair, and that's all. You're in a perpetual repairing. If it's a lot greater, then maybe there's some remodeling. And then there's like 3 levels. I've done a video on it.
Stems from resistance training to a certain degree, but most of us are familiar with the
I
good
like how he says stems to a certain degree. Oh, it does.
old myofibrillar growth. This is where you
Look right there. It says sarcoplasm, myofibrillar growth. Yeah, that's what you want to build, but you could be building just sarcoplasmic, which all of you are building out there.
break down a muscle fiber and you tear it down and then it rebuilds stronger. And that really is the classic.
Yeah, you tear it down and you rebuild, and it comes back rebuilt stronger. Yeah.
Way. Now, there's multiple ways to achieve that. We'll talk about that. But we're also going to talk about
No, there's only one way to achieve it. The eccentric is what causes that damage. Now, how much eccentric load is on that muscle to cause that damage it's up to you, bro. Get it? Now, if you're lifting heavier concentrically, thinking that that's what's going to cause it to damage, then you're wrong. Get it? You're wrong. It's the eccentric that causes it. It's the load on the eccentric, not the load on the concentric, that causes it to create these damages.
other interesting pathways in which you build muscle through your training. So it's pretty interesting. This
Well, what pathways through your training? What pathways?
is going to be a 2-part series. This first part, we're going to cover 6 ways that you build muscle. Somewhat even...
There are no 6 ways that you build muscle. There's only one way. You damage it, and then your body repairs and remodels it.
unconventional ways. And then in the next part of this series, it's going to release...
I like how he says unconventional ways. Lifting eccentrically is not unconventional. It's conventional. The only thing you did was leave out the concentric. Now, you can build it in a full range of motion, but that eccentric eventually will adapt. So you're going to have to do something different. You're going to have to start lifting more eccentrically.
tomorrow, and we'll link to it in the description. That's going to be a video talking about why you're not building muscle, how to kind of overcome some of...
Yeah, it's easy because all of you are lifting conventionally. You're lifting full range of motion, and your eccentric has adapted. Get it?
these hurdles. So it'll be a great little series. So we'll just jump right into this first one. The first way that we build muscle is the way that most of us know. It's the way that a lot of the evidence is really rooted in. It's the classical hypertrophy model. It's where you are breaking...
Wait, finally, somebody actually says the word myofibrillar hypertrophy, like sarcoplasmic hypertrophy.
down the muscle fiber, and you're rebuilding it.
Yeah.
At Paradesis by
You break it down and you rebuild it. Exactly. But none of you are doing that.
Down the muscle fiber, and you're rebuilding it. Possibly with more fiber number, but essentially...
Possibly with more fiber number, but none of you are doing that. Want to know why? Because here's the classic. Wow. They took this from NCBI. The statement there was much less damage in the second week applies to a reduction in the amount of harm or destruction experienced during the second week compared to the first. The exact nature of the damage, whether it's physical, okay, not financial, hold on. I'm talking about this one, the second period of exercise after week after the first, hold on. I guess it misunderstood me, whatever. Muscle damage, eccentric exercise, okay, mechanical, whatever, adaptation, whatever. So here it is. there was much less damage. There. A second period of exercise a week after the first produces much less damage in a full range. They forgot to mention in a full range of motion. You understand me? Produces much less damage in a full range of motion. Now you understand that? So this is a result. What's the result? Why in a full range of motion does it no longer give you damage? There's less damage, and now it could be that damage could turn into just a repair without any remodeling. Well, this is what happens. This is a result of an adaptation process. One of the proposed mechanisms for that adaptation is an increase in sarcomere number in muscle fibers. And what do sarcomeres do? They protect muscle from further assaults. Yeah, when you build muscle, it protects it from further assaults. So, hold on. Okay, it's not going to answer me when I'm asking it, but whatever. You get the picture, dude. So, but here's the thing. Eccentric exercise, which involves lengthening muscle, while it's contracting, generally leads to greater muscle damage than what? Concentric or isometric exercises. So there you go. This is because eccentric contractions place a greater mechanical strain on the muscle fibers, leading to more tissue damage. Well, because all the damage is in the eccentric. Now, isometric, can it get damaged? Well, isometric means something that's standing still, but holding on to a very heavy weight, and it pulling on the muscle fibers. That's totally different. But you get the idea, whatever. Let's go back here. But you're adapted anyway, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All these people are adapted in gyms, whatever.
Actually, with more fiber growth as the main part. But let's look at a study that was published in Frontiers of Physiology, because this breaks this down a little bit more. It helps us understand what we're after. So what this study did is it had subjects do 3 times per week of either high volume resistance training or high load.
Listen to what he said. People coming in 3 times a week, high volume. That's considered high volume. Anything more than 1 time a week is considered high volume. So now you're training 3 days a week. See what I mean? So that is considered high volume. That means your muscles are adapted. And if they're adapted, the majority of your gains are sarcoplasmic. They're all sarcoplasmic. Now he's talking about high load.
High weight resistance training for 6 weeks.
High weight, high load, okay, for 6 weeks.
And they looked at muscle cross-sectional area, all these different things. And what they found at the end of this design was that the people that did the high volume work actually had more muscle cross-sectional area than the people that did the high load work, meaning it was actually more.
Yeah, but that could be sarcoplasmic, non-contractile proteins. That's what it really is.
About volume for this myofibrillar growth, which is kind of interesting because.
No. It wasn't myofibrillar growth. It was sarcoplasmic. He's a liar. He's making that shit up, bro. Look, check this out. All you have to do is read understand how to read the literature. Muscle fiber hypertrophy response to 6 weeks of high volume resistance training in trained young men is largely attributed to sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, not myofibrillar. He's wrong when he says that.
When we look at it, we think, okay, we tear down a muscle. So the heavier the load, the more muscle we.
Easier said than done. We tear down the muscles. Yeah, anybody can say that. Hey, we just go and we make $1 billion. Yeah, make $1 billion. Fuck off, man.
Tear. But it almost seems as though higher volume with a moderate load was better. So it's not just about tearing it down. There's all.
Yeah, you're building non-contractile proteins, sarcoplasmic. That's why it's going to grow a lot faster.
obviously other components here if volume is at play. More volume, more numbers of sets, more, not necessarily numbers of reps, but total volume will increase the total amount of load over a whole workout, right? So you could do slightly less weights and do more volume and actually get more myofibrillar growth.
No, you're not. That's a lie. He's lying. He's lying.
How does this translate into protein synthesis? Well, the higher volume group also had higher protein synthesis. So we know that from a muscle protein synthesis side.
Okay. Yeah, because they got higher protein synthesis because there's a window for protein breakdown and a window for protein synthesis. Higher volume, they're going into the gym often. And so they're building non-contractile proteins. Get it? High volume. Protein synthesis. So what? That's because you have protein synthesis. Protein synthesis doesn't build a myofibrillar. Damage builds the myofibrillar. The satellite cell does.
It's pretty darn awesome to do a little bit more volume.
Yeah, okay.
But what does that mean? That's kind of loose. Like, how does this help us build muscle? What's the takeaway here?
Means nothing.
Well, with that, we look at a 2020 study, and this was a large review that looked at 28 different studies, and it helped us understand a little bit more of where we need to be. What this study found is that muscle strength gains are the most superior marker for muscle growth. Now,
no. Because when you start lifting, a lot of your strength gains are the nervous system. It's from the nervous system giving you those strength gains. He's lying. He's making this shit up, bro.
The nice thing about this is relative. It doesn't mean that you need to be
It's the activation of the motor units.
bench pressing 1,000 pounds. It doesn't mean you need to be squatting 1,500 pounds. It doesn't mean that. It's a relative thing. So what they found is that moderate to heavy strength gains were superior to lightweight strength gains, meaning improving your strength is number one priority. But if you are improving your strength at a moderate load or a high load, you are going to have better improvement than just improving strength under a light load. But at
Here's
the end
the
of
question. How do you improve your bone strength? By making the nerves better? Making the nerves stronger? How do you increase your bone strength? See what I mean? Now, here's a question. How the fuck do you increase your muscle strength? Hey, visualize that, experience that. Oh, I lift a heavy weight and I got stronger. But while your muscles, they didn't grow, bro. So did you get stronger because they didn't grow? How stupid is that?
Today, improving strength in general is the highest marker, the highest notation we can make in terms of how you're building muscle or successfully building muscle.
Yeah,
so what this tells us is that proximity to failure for myofibrillar growth and myofibrillar hypertrophy, this whole process, is the most important. Now, if you're doing light load, you're probably not going to get as much, but if you're doing a moderate load with higher volume, it's allowing you to get more tearing down, more breakdown.
No, it's not. He's crazy. You can only break it down once. You can't keep breaking it down. When is it going to grow?
Average person. Now, a power lifter, it might be easier for them to just go and get their load in and get their total volume in by going heavy. But
that's why they're all complaining they're small and bodybuilders are bigger than them. These power lifters. Get it, man?
Not realistic for most people that are trying to build muscle, maybe at the beginning or an intermediate level. So ultimately, the key takeaway here is proximity to failure, somewhat load dependent.
Powerlifting is a sport. It's not a modality for building muscle. Bodybuilding is. That's why they call it bodybuilding. They don't call it powerlifting.
It's probably the biggest driver for mTOR.
At Bet365, we're all about amazing.
The biggest driver for mTOR is not
mTOR. Total stimulation.
The biggest driver for mTOR is exercise-induced muscle damage training, eccentric exercise.
Anabolic signaling. And ultimately, muscle protein synthesis. Now, as with anything that I'm talking about today, protein.
You can lift forever in the gym, and you can say protein synthesis. That's really great. You're just going through a repair because you're adapted.
Is going to be critical. Absolutely critical, because that's how you repair. That is your muscle protein synthesis the other side of it, right? And it's also a stimulus in and of itself.
That is how you repair protein synthesis. That's why everybody's growing in the gym. That's why they're frustrated. The newbie gain limit, genetic limit, and hard gainer. That's why they're all frustrated, right? Because they're building muscles all the time. Yeah, Thomas DeLauer. Yeah. Protein synthesis. Yeah.
So whey protein being highly insulinogenic, highly high in leucine, so extremely anabolic. One of the most anabolic proteins you could consume.
I would not agree it wasn't highly anabolic. It helps with protein synthesis, mTOR. I mean, leucine. Whey protein, that's the amino acids. When you buy them on the shelf, amino acids, the tablets, they're made from whey. So, yeah, is whey highly anabolic? Yeah, you could say it, yeah.
So yes, you want to load up on the whey protein. If you don't do that, yeah, you're still going to get possibly some growth if you get enough protein throughout the day. But realistically, it's best to just get a nice bolus of it in. I put a link down below for the whey protein.
You're not going to get any growth. He's lying to you. What growth are you getting? Prove it. Show me their growth. Show me. Where is it? Fuck off, man. You're not getting any fucking growth, okay? It's full of shit. None of you are growing out there.
That I use, it's one called
Lies. You're getting fat, but you're not growing.
Omar Nutrition.
Oh, wait, you are growing. You're growing fat.
And it is hands down the best tasting whey protein that I have ever had.
Whatever, I don't want to know.
Sponsoring this series, so big thank you to them for allowing. Next method of growth is a little happens. We have a somewhat temporary growth that translates, but these things can grow. People in the exercise physiology community would say, well, this is
There you go. Sarcoplasmic expansion. Hold on a second. I think I missed this because he was about to speak. He keeps selling his stupid products.
Next method of growth is a little bit different. It's sarcoplasmic expansion. Now, some people in the exercise physiology community would say, well, this is temporary muscle growth.
No, it's not. It's contractile protein. It's not temporary muscle growth.
It kind of is, but it can translate.
No, it's not. It's not kinda is.
More permanent growth. Now, sarcoplasms are.
Okay. Oh, you mean permanent? I thought he meant like. I thought he said temporary or whatever. Like temporary, as in you just get a little bit and that's it. Yeah, it's not permanent. You have to. That's why your gains are going all the time. Y'all complaining out there. You increase the sarcoplasm is what you did. You're lifting, high volume training, or whatever you're doing. They're going all the time in the gym, lifting, whatever. You're adapted, full range of motion, all this crap. Your shitty lifting is what's creating the sarcoplasmic. And you, hooray, I built muscle. Yeah, sure you did. All of you did. Yeah.
Like those are the actual like contractile proteins in the muscle, but these things can grow.
No, those are non-contractile proteins. They're not contractile proteins. Myofibrillar growth is contractile. Sarcoplasmic is non-contractile, and it can expand exponentially massive.
They can expand. They can hold water. They can hold more glycogen. Okay, so when this ultimately happens, we have a somewhat temporary growth.
Yes, I will agree.
That translates, but check out the research and sort of the mechanisms because it'll help us make sense.
It isn't permanent like myofibrillar growth.
Like it'll help it make sense so that we can know.
And it doesn't translate to strength. Yeah.
How do we layer our training, so to speak? So there was a study published in PLOS 1 that took a look at previously trained participants. So people.
Hey, that's the study I just brought up.
That have trained before. So it took these previously trained people and they took...
You know, he must be watching my channel. I think he watched my channel. That's why he came up with this idea now to make this video.
Muscle biopsies before and after 3 and 6 week training loads. So they put them through different training blocks with lower volume and higher volume. Now their workouts were kind of interesting. Now, this was a cool study because what they ended up doing is at the end, they took the people that had the most muscle growth and they did further chemical testing on their muscle to see other things that have happened. So they're like, okay, who grew the most? And of those people that grew the most, like what was happening in their body? What's going on? So the workouts were kind of cool. Like day 1, it was like back squats, bench press, there was a lat pull down, there was a straight leg deadlift. Day 2 was very similar, except they added in a military press, like an overhead press. But the people that did the 3-day-a-week training program, they ended up having significantly more volume. So instead of doing 10 sets per week per body part or exercise, they actually did 32. So a huge jump in volume. So they wanted to see what happens when you have a big increase in volume. Okay, and those people obviously had more growth. There was significantly more volume. No surprise there. But here's what they found. there was a 23% increase in muscle cross-sectional area in that group. We're talking a significant amount more growth. So by going from essentially 10 sets to 32 sets per exercise per week, that gave them almost a quarter more gains. Okay, now, before I get into the sarcoplasmic
Yeah, but it's fake.
side, let me just explain what this could look like for you. You don't have to do this all the time. This was progressively increasing to this, so they weren't doing this from the get-go. So what's cool is that you could occasionally load on volume and get significant growth out of it. You don't have to do high volume all the time. Even Dr. Mike Israetel talks about this. Like, you could go do a volume spurt where you just be like, I'm gonna go high volume for a couple week period of time. And you get some serious growth that comes as a result of it. Now, some of that growth can be just
Not some of it. It's fake. It's fake growth.
sarcoplasmic growth. So let's talk about what that looks like. In addition to this 23% increase in muscle cross-sectional area, they found that a lot of that was an increase in sarcoplasmic protein concentrations, which means that there was just overall more intracellular water, there was more concentration of the actual proteins itself, and there was just an increase in glycogen. So carbohydrates actually stored more in there. And this whole thing persisted for about 8 days. So they had this growth, this sort of residual pump and growth that lasted for 8 days. But as a result of this, there's more blood flow, there was more fluid, and actually potentially more growth and intracellular volume that allowed them to get stronger with that internal leverage that they got. So even though this increase in size was like 8 days long, if you occasionally do these spurts of high volume training, you get growth through a different way. So again, to bring it back to earth, like, you could do like your standard model of training with whatever volume you usually do and do a 2-week sprint of high volume, not just for mechanical and myofibrillar growth that we talked about first, but this temporary growth that you might see that's really kind of cool.
It's really kind of cool.
Interesting thing that happens within the muscle. It's called glycogen.
Yeah, this temporary kind of growth, that's kind of cool. It's cool to make fake muscles and walk around with fake cool muscles. Yeah. It's ridiculous, man, bro. This is funny shit.
Glycogen supercompensation.
Look, I got some glycogen, and then I'm going to call it a fancy word. Supercompensation. Yes, I did use this in science, supercompensation. Look, glycogen. I got glycogen in my muscle. My muscles, they blew up. The balloon method. Okay.
So when you have an acute increase in volume, the body actually says, wait a minute, is this guy going to start training a whole lot more? Let's start soaking up more carbohydrates into the muscle.
Yeah, you become an endurance athlete now. The more often you come in high volume is associated with endurance. That's why he says when you start consuming more carbohydrates, where do they go? In your muscles. Yeah.
Just to prepare. So it's a super compensation effect, which is great because it, A, allows you to eat more carbohydrates, but B, those carbohydrates go into the muscle.
Oh, it's great. It allows you to eat more carbohydrates, so you can eat more carbohydrates and put them in your muscles. Yeah, sure, yeah.
So you get fuller, and you don't just get a better pump right after your workout. You're walking around.
Yeah, you get fuller, you get a better pump, and you walk around what?
For a period of time. Higher volume is going to actually allow you to hold this pump that is more than just a pump at this point.
Oh, it's more than a pump at this time. Yeah, sure, yeah.
It's actual sarcoplasmic growth. And
wow, it's actual sarcoplasmic artificial muscle growth for the aesthetic look. Oh, cool. Yeah.
Concentration increase. It's legit, even though some of it is fluid. You also have an increase in these sarcoplasmic enzymes because you have such an increase in ATP turnover. So you're creating and using so much more energy with this acute increase in volume.
Yeah, you're an endurance athlete now. That's what you turned yourself into a lifting slave. Get it? You've turned yourself into a sarcoplasmic slave. Get it? Listen to me. Anything that isn't permanent, you are a fucking slave, dude. People that live concentrically, their strength is based on nervous system strength. They are fucking slaves to that concentric lifting. And any asshole that is fucking lifting and building sarcoplasmic slave is a slave to fucking sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. Get it? Like he said, temporary. Temporary. So you are all slaves. Me, I'm not a slave. I'm not a slave to exercise. I'm not a slave to lifting. I'm not a slave to any of those things. I don't even need to be a slave to strength because I lift eccentrically. I build muscles. I build I build fucking myofibrillar growth. It's permanent. And I have permanent strength, permanent natural strength. I don't have to rely on my nervous system. Get it? See what I mean? See the difference? So People that live eccentrically, we're not slaves. But people that live concentrically or adapted full range of motion, sarcoplasmic, all that, they are slaves to sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, slaves to full range of motion, slave to concentric lifting, strength, all this in the nervous system. Garbage. It's all garbage.
Actually have more sarcoplasmic enzymes. So now you have the ability to build more muscle and to get stronger. So occasionally going high volume for this sarcoplasmic.
I like how he says, now you have the ability to build more muscle, but none of you are. That's the problem. You're not building any muscle.
Growth could be really beneficial. But again, do not go high volume all the time. Do these spurts of it.
How can it
and
be,
then, of course,
how can it be beneficial? In what way is it beneficial? To pump your muscles up, sarcoplasmic, to hypertrophy, the sarcoplasm. This is crazy.
Pump itself, like you have an increase in integrins, you have an increase in what's called MAPK signaling. All these things actually trigger growth. It's like
it's unhealthy for you. That's why that fake bodybuilding and drugs are unhealthy for you, expanding the sarcoplasm. It's gross.
There's these little anchors that are on our muscles, and when they get stretched with a pump, they sort of signal. They signal a number of things. FAK, they signal MAPK, these enzymes that we don't need to talk about right now, but basically the stretching
sure.
and the growth of the muscle can signal this overall, or stretching and just kind of temporary growth can signal a more permanent growth later on. Now let's move in.
No, it's not. You're not stretching anything. It's not going to be permanent nothing. Listen, a sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is predominantly a lot bigger, stronger in the eccentric because you're building myofibular growth. They go hand in hand. See what I mean? But you don't get more one than the other. You can make one more than the other. It depends what you're doing there. Small amount of damage just to trigger it for the entire week, and then you just load glycogen. But that's stupid to do that. You understand me? But you can do that. But concentric lifters, full range of motion that are adapted to their eccentric, they're just getting sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. They're not building any muscles.
This third category, which is a very interesting one. This is the metabolic stress piece. It's kind of funny when you look at all
the metabolic stress. Yes. Okay, whatever.
These different things within the body, even the brain. You have scientists that'll talk about all.
Yeah, cell swelling. Let's swell our cells. Let's swell them.
These different theories, and then all of a sudden you have a new scientist that comes in with a metabolic theory. There is a metabolic theory of why muscle grows too. And it probably
why is there a metabolic theory that muscle grows too? How do muscles grow?
Coincides with a lot of these other things. No one is saying that mechanical growth isn't the main thing, but we are saying
mechanical growth isn't the main thing. Mechanical just means you're moving your arm with a weight back and forth. That's mechanical. How does it grow from mechanical? Sarcoplasmic or myofibular? See what I'm trying to explain to you? You can do mechanical. You can get mechanical stress and get sarcoplasmic, but you could get mechanical stress and get muscle damage. It depends on what you're doing there.
Other ways too. So metabolic growth and metabolic stress, so to speak, is where you have
metabolism, metabolic stress. Like what? Drinking a lot of water?
Metabolites that pool up. So when you train, you feel that burn, right? Okay, so you get a buildup of hydrogen ions.
Feel that burn, yeah. No, I don't know the last time I ever felt a burn, you dumbass.
You get lactate into a dissociated form of lactic acid, and then you end up with inorganic phosphates. So you end up with these metabolic waste products that aren't really waste.
Metabolic waste products. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
At all. They build up and they actually trigger some signals from a metabolic and cellular signaling side.
They do they? Metabolic and waste products, they get a signaling, yeah, okay, yeah.
To induce growth. As a matter of fact,
To what? Induce growth? What kind of growth does it induce? By getting these waste products and all these metabolic signals there. What kind of growth? He didn't mention it. He didn't say what it was.
Study in sports orthopedics and traumatology that was just published in March of 2025 that looked at this and found there is something there. It was a large review that looked at the metabolic sort of theory of building muscle. And here's what it kind of lays out.
What's that theory of building muscle through this so-called metabolic stress shit?
metabolic stress can be an anabolic signal. Straightforward. Okay, it's mainly the...
Yeah, it really all equates to muscle damage at the end of the day, dude. No muscle damage. Doesn't matter how much metabolic stress, mechanical tension, or whatever that you did there. If you didn't create enough damage using mechanical stress and metabolic stress and whatever, if those things aren't fucking damaged, they ain't fucking growing.
Buildup of inorganic phosphate. So when the inorganic phosphate builds up, that's kind of what causes that peripheral fatigue.
Whatever.
Right? The burn and the overall fatigue. That is...
Oh, that's the fatigue. If fatigue builds muscles now. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, yeah.
Inorganic phosphate building up, causing a problem.
Yeah.
That means it is me.
I just need
Fatigue acts as a driver for more recruitment of muscle fibers and ultimately more growth. So this fatigue and overcome...
Oh, so it recruits more muscle fibers, and that's how it grows. So it grows by recruiting muscle fibers, and then it grows. Yeah. How exactly again?
Overcoming the fatigue and overcoming the burn actually causes the recruitment saying,
Overcoming the fatigue and the burn recruits what?
oh, we need more. We need more help. We're fatiguing. We need it. Bring it.
Oh, we're fatiguing. We need more help. So what does it do now?
And the help as much as we can.
Okay.
This does amazing things. This allows for more growth. It allows for more fiber
How does it allow for more growth? How?
recruitment. So just by overcoming the
More fiber recruitment, more what?
fatigue, we go through a lot of beneficial things.
Like what?
Now again, there's the
Like what?
lactate accumulation. Lactate is
Lactate accumulates. So lactate builds muscles now. Okay.
not just what makes us burn. That's not even really the main thing. It's the hydrogen ions, the inorganic phosphate that kind of makes
yeah.
the burn and the fatigue. So when the
That's what
lactate
makes the burn and fatigue. Okay.
builds as a result of these things, lactate is this metabolic waste product that also acts as a fuel, but it is one of the
So you're building your muscles through waste products. Okay, they're blowing up. Okay, great. Yeah, it's cool.
primary signaling devices. And what that means is it signals to the body to release other things. Things like
Yeah.
VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor. This
VEGF,
causes the
yeah.
growth of new capillaries and blood
Oh, new capillaries and blood flow. Okay.
vessels, getting more blood flow to
Yeah.
the muscle, more blood flow
More
to the
blood flow, eh?
nooks and crannies to allow for actual protein synthesis to occur.
So it allows for blood flow to get in there for protein synthesis to take place. But guess what? If there's no damage and then the blood flow is going there and everything, it's not growing.
Subsequently, you find an increase in IGF, insulin-like growth factor. Okay?
Yeah, doesn't matter how much IGF you have. No damage, no growth. It's really simple.
This is another very important attribute when it comes down to the entire cascade of mTOR and muscle protein synthesis. So now we have the mechanical breakdowns
Yes, protein synthesis, mTOR. Yeah, okay.
side. We have the sarcoplasmic growth. We
Okay, we have the breakdown side. Now we have the sarcoplasmic growth. Okay, now it's starting to make sense. Okay, breakdown, yeah. Muscle damage.
have the metabolic side that is signaling, which probably works close in tune with the
Yeah, but what if you're no longer damaging? What if it's just a minor amount of damage and it's just repairing now? There's no remodeling because it doesn't have to, because it hasn't occurred enough stress like the eccentric does. The eccentric places more stress on the myofibrillar at 140% than a full range of motion concentrically lifting at 70%. Get it? And that's why nobody's building any muscle.
brain and with our metabolism and what we eat, right? So this mechanical signaling. So how do we capitalize on this? This is where
don't.
really chasing the burn.
You don't. Look at this guy with these tiny weights. He thinks that's going to build a muscle. He's got like 10-pound weights, and he thinks, well, if I just go really slow with the 10-pound weights, I put enough stress on their mechanical, it's going to magically grow, broski. Yeah.
Can help. So
Look at him shaking, like pretending like this is doing something. Give me fucking break, bro. Are you really that stupid?
now the burn could be higher rep. It kind of
This isn't doing fuck all. He's just pretending.
coincides with the pump too, right? So the burn is going to be like, okay, trading in that
Some bullshit lifting.
mid-range, that 10 to 15 range, it just really burns. But going pretty quick
Oh, that 10 to 15 range, it really burns. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
rests between sets. Okay, not doing it all the time. But remember, how would we want to layer our training? Periods of mechanical growth, periods of high volume, as we talked about in the second segment, and now periods of short rest.
They all go together. You understand me? A mechanical nothing is going to do nothing if there's no damage there. Who gives a shit?
to really get a pump. Or BFR, if you're into that, blood flow restriction training, save that for
again, to really get a pump. People that are building myofibrillar growth, they're not interested in pumps. They might get a pump, but that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for damage and DOMs. That's what they're chasing.
Another video, but realistically, you're trying to just kind of load these metabolites up as much as you can. Okay, so things like 21.
You know, he talked more about sarcoplasmic than he talked about myofibrillar growth. He didn't tell you what the symptoms were of myofibrillar growth. What are the fucking symptoms when you get myofibrillar growth? And when you do get it, how long does it take for the body to repair and then remodel it? How long, Thomas? See what I mean? He's not going to tell you. He wants to talk about bullshit stuff like sarcoplasmic garbage training. He didn't tell you how to train to build myofibrillar growth. He spends more time on this sarcoplasmic garbage. Look at that. Look how long this video is.
With bicep curls are such a good example. You know, where you're doing full range, bottom range, top range. You're just burning.
You're burning and this and that. Whatever. Okay.
Burning. And that's a huge metabolic signal, right?
Yeah.
So if you go short rest periods, you're never getting a chance to really clear that waste out, and you allow a chance to kind of build it up.
That's a huge metabolic signal for what? Exactly. For what?
And trap it to a certain degree. So doing things like that, or going leg extensions and then going right into squats and just chasing a burn. You don't have to do this all the time.
So you're chasing a burn, but you're not chasing muscle damage and DOMs. Okay, I get it. Yeah.
But we're layering these things, accessing these multiple avenues of growth. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is one that I know Dr. Mike Israetel talks about a lot, but that's the stretch-mediated hypertrophy.
What is this bullshit? Stretch-mediated hypertrophy. So now that you're adapted to your exercises, you're going to keep stretching the fiber, keep stretching it with your exercises, full range of motion, keep stretching it, and maybe hope that it will build a muscle. Okay, yeah.
Now, stretch-mediated hypertrophy still kind of falls somewhat as a subcategory under the first thing we talked about. Okay,
Well, yeah, what's the first thing we talked about? Please tell us.
Stretch-mediated hypertrophy is still sort of breaking down the muscle. It's where you're...
No, it's not. That's a lie. He said stretch-mediated. He didn't say muscle damage. Muscle damage means micro tears. He said stretch-mediated.
Focusing more on the range in which you're loading.
I can show you channels where people are doing stretch-mediated and they're not getting anywhere fast, okay? And I can show you a channel that's doing exercise-induced muscle damage and they've got more in a couple of months than these people on these channels that have been doing it for over 8 years now on their channel, stretch-mediated.
Versus just the load in general. So loading with a relatively lower weight and a stretched position, you're going to need less weight to overall load to the same degree.
You're going to need less weight to load to a degree. See what I mean? You understand me? For stretch mediated. In muscle damage, the load has to be astronomically heavy in the eccentric to get damaged.
Just because of simple, like, lever arm. There was a 2023 review published in Sports Medicine that looked at
I'm not saying that stretch-mediated hypertrophy cannot cause some growth. Everything will cause a growth to a degree. Everything will work until it stops working. But there's one thing that will continuously work. There's only one exercise that will continuously build muscle, and that's eccentric. So why waste your time on all this bullshit that this guy's talking about?
Stretch-mediated hypertrophy response. And it basically found that it's the same sort of mechanical growth that's occurring with mid-range, like normal lifting, right? It's just slightly...
Yeah, but how much growth is there? Minuscule. It's minuscule.
Different in the way that there's a little bit different signaling, but you're still tearing down muscle fibers in a very similar way.
No, you're not.
There's this thing that's
no, you're not. Not really. Not in this. Not. It's not the same way. No.
Called passive tension, and this is really focusing on those integrins. So those are those mechanical anchors. So I want you to think of like these mechanical anchors that sense load. Okay, so if you're just working in the regular range here, you're getting a certain degree of those suckers being activated. But once you stretch, these mechanical anchors, they are like sensors, and they're sensing the load through a different massive tension
I love this. They're sensing the load. Oh, okay, yeah.
is causing mechanical stress, but it's also causing a little bit more of a signal from these integrins.
So?
As a result of this, you're going to send more blood flow there. You're going to send essentially.
Why would I use these non-superior modalities? If I'm looking to create myofibular growth or whatever, why would I use any of these exercise modalities that he's talking about when I can use the most superior modality to get there, eccentric exercise? Why would I do that? That I would have to be a loser. I'd have to be stupid to use all these phony fucking exercise regimes to get to my destination. It's like, hey man, we wanna get the fastest way. We want to get to the destination. We want to go to Mexico or something. You take a donkey, him take a train, this guy take a car, this guy take a bicycle, and me, I'm gonna take the airplane the fastest way. Why would you not take an airplane, aviation to get there? Why would you take a bicycle, a train, a car, whatever? They'll all get you to your destination. You understand me? But the superior one will get you there the quickest, the airplane. Who the fuck would take a donkey, bro, to get there?
More overall satellite cells, which are the cells that kind of fuse ultimately into the muscle to grow. They're like muscle stem cells. So this stress-mediated hypertrophy, there's even some evidence that suggests
This stress-mediated hypertrophy. Yeah, okay. What a goof.
that maybe there's a proprioceptive thing. Like by just going out into an extreme position, the body overcompensates in a way and starts to rebuild to kind of like protect, because you're saying, uh-oh, this person
Rebuild to protect. It rebuilds to protect only in the eccentric from muscle damage, you fool.
is going to get into a stretched position. You have to be really strong to hold a stretched position. You got to be really strong there. So maybe there's a compensatory
No,
mechanism
you don't. You don't have to be strong to hold a stretch position. This is a lie.
where the body's saying, we need to strengthen this to make sure that we're not going to tear and rupture when this guy does this, right? So
Yeah.
thinking about that, how do you apply this? This is where I might recommend like looking at some of Dr. Mike Israetel's work with this, because he's done a lot.
Like, does he actually know what builds muscle other than taking TRT, being an influencer like everybody else on drugs, man? Like Mike Israetel and this other drug addict. Come on, dude.
About this, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but the reality is that occasionally doing these extreme stretch movements or doing these movements where you're really getting to a stretched position, maybe a couple exercises out of your day, you're activating these different mechanisms. But I think the thing that I take away from this, as someone that's a busy person with young kids and I don't always have time to do high volume work, is maybe I don't have time or I'm too lethargic that day to really go balls to the wall with my training. Maybe I could do some lower intensity stretch mediated work where I'm really working the stretch with a lighter weight and lower volume that day, and know that
Ever had the one friend who finds all the best stuff?
maybe I'm not just preserving muscle, but I might even be growing muscle via a different pathway that
Oh, yeah,
day.
sure you are.
So accessing these different pathways are really, really, really important, because this is how we
Yes, they're really, really, really important to access these ways, man.
get the most out of it. Like we can access these different pathways
Yeah.
if we're not in the mood to just go back.
No, I was actually accessing these pathways. They asked me at the airport too. They said, "Would you like to access renting a bicycle and getting to Mexico, or would you like to take the airplane there?"
I squat 500 pounds. Now I'm going to focus on a couple honorable mentions here. First one I want to focus on is a highly scrutinized thing known as
Okay.
time under tension. Now, the thing is that time under
I love this time under tension. Well, eccentric supramaximal overload, there's a lot of time under tension there. There can be time under tension in the accentuated, but not as much as something moving in real time or supramaximal. But how you use these modalities, one slower, faster, and one simply just the eccentric, going with gravity, man, how you use them, it's up to you. You if you want to get to a certain destination a lot faster, let's say you can do a lot of exercises. Smaller muscle groups, larger muscle groups, but you want to get there a lot further and faster. So some people forgo the full supramaximal and they go for the accentuated. You understand me? You understand? Accentuated so they could get there a lot quicker and faster. That's the whole point. The point is to focus on exercises that get you to your fucking destination the most fastest way you can get there, and not wasting your time lifting a heavy weight, bro, pump training, whatever the fuck these people are doing out there. Stop wasting your time. Get it? Time is valuable. It's not something that we have forever. You understand me? You don't have to spend 30, 25 years, 30, 40 years lifting in a garage forever weights because you need to maintain some phony, nervous system strength or some bullshit. Get it? Just build muscle and you'll get physically bigger and stronger. And then you don't have to practice anymore. Get it? Shit.
Tension isn't a unique mechanism to build muscle. It's just capitalizing on a lot of the different things that we talked about. So people like to train where instead of focusing on the load, they're focusing on how long is my muscle under tension. I would like to rephrase this a little bit more as maybe just eccentric focus training, where you're doing more like eccentric.
Now he's making sense. Focused on eccentric training, yeah, but not with a light weight.
Movements, which is really going to capitalize on that classical model of my.
No, it doesn't feel enough. The stress has to be heavy enough on there to cause that damage, to cause it to come back bigger and stronger. That's the whole idea.
Fibrillar growth. You're just tearing because anytime the load is overcoming you, you're tearing down more. But
No, you're not. You're not. You may get some damage there, but it'll just be just enough to only repair it. Your body will forgo the remodeling and just repair. That's why people complained. They'll say, "Oh, it's just repairing." It is just repairing because you're not really remodeling.
Seen in a lot of work that eccentric might not be the best for hypertrophy. It might be good for stability.
It is the best for hypertrophy. It is hypertrophy. Eccentric is hypertrophy. That's where all the muscle growth is, you dumbass. You just said stretch, mediate, and all that. Now, sarcoplasmic, that doesn't have to do with anything with eccentric or concentric, you dumbass. You're building non-contractile proteins. What an idiot.
And some other things. I'm not an expert right there. But the point is that, yeah, some time under tension work.
Exactly. You're not an expert. You're not an expert. So why give advice if you're not an expert at it? Go out and become an expert at it and then come back and give us advice. You dumbass.
Be good. Now, there's these things that are called focal adhesion sites, and these work really closely with those integrins I talked about, those mechanical anchors. Oh, yeah. So when you have the weight overcome you, okay.
How do you know that?
Those integrins that are sensing the stretch and sensing the load, those obviously can do some work themselves, but then they have these things called focal adhesion sites. And when you kind of bust through and you let the weight overcome you, those focal adhesion sites somewhat get activated. And when they get activated, it signals chemical changes and it signals mechanical changes that allow you to build muscle. So then you're recruiting.
Oh, brother, man. Give me a break, bro. It's just, this is just laughable.
Other molecules, then you're getting a metabolic signaling. So the thing about time under tension is it is kind of combining a few different things.
Whatever.
It's combining the metabolic piece because you get a lot of burn.
Like you understand why I cannot stand listening to these people, bro. They just they give me headaches. Like this guy, I'm losing fucking IQ points, bro. Listen to this guy. Listening to him, he's an idiot. He makes absolutely no sense. He's contradicting everything that he says in these videos. He mentions myofibrillar growth. He says muscle damage, but then he turns back to he wants you to do all these unsophisticated modalities to get to your destination. This is ridiculous. What will get you to your destination the fastest, the quickest way?
In time under tension, or you're doing eccentric loading. So I'm not here to necessarily advocate for time under tension as a method. I'm here to say the eccentric loading piece might allow you to get a little bit of all of these things that I've talked.
Oh, just a second ago, he said it wouldn't, but now he's the eccentric load will get you there. Doing all of these things will get you there. So then why focus on all the other things? You dummy.
But I don't think that the science is quite.
Listen to me. The eccentric exercise will get you all those things and get you there the quickest. You understand me? It'll get you sarcoplasmic. It'll get you myofibrillar growth. It'll get you mediated stretch. It'll get you everything. Metabolic stress, whatever, mechanical tension, all of it in eccentric overload will get you there, to your destination, because he just admitted it.
there to say this is really the solid way to go. I will honestly
It is the solid way to go.
say that I had a lot of success with it because there was a period of time when I had so many injuries I couldn't really lift heavy. So it's an important one to at least mention. Another
I had all these injuries. I couldn't lift heavy. Why are you having all these injuries? Because you're weak. What the fuck, man? This is so stupid, bro. This guy's an idiot. How do you get stronger? Well, if you're getting injuries, that means you're weak, fucking. You understand me? And says, oh, I'm going to use this now because it's used for, look, they use Eccentric for rehab, definitely. So he's like, I'm going to be using Eccentric now. What a dummy.
one that's very important to mention, and I don't think has enough science on it just yet to really get crazy excited, but I am cautiously
optimistic. What do you mean it doesn't have enough science on it? Everything has science on it. Go read it. They have report after report on. There's a million on there.
And I could even say bullish on isometric training.
They have it. There's enough on isometric. It just means you're you're in between in a state where you're not moving. That body part is not moving.
Okay, some of the most...
Well, that's not going to do anything. Her sitting in that isometric position with her hands up in the air, that's not going to do nothing for her. That's just going to make her better sitting in that position. But that's not going to cause any growth or anything. They're doing that.
Esteemed academic people that I know and people that are really in amazing shape do serious isometric training. So I don't really understand the mechanisms of how isometric training could be working outside of the nervous system. The nervous system, like, you're kind of forced to...
We all have coping mechanisms.
The nervous system, like, you're kind of forced to tax the CNS in certain ways. That is...
Oh, you're forced to tax the CNS. Well, that poor CNS.
Usually not used to being taxed. You're holding in a static position. Okay. But there's also really good anti-sarcopenia.
I guess we should use isometric to get there to our destination. We use something less something more inferior. Okay.
Like that's muscle wasting and kind of the degradation of muscle as we get older. So these mechanisms where people will just do isometrics and actually preserve muscle. So there's something there.
Oh, they'll do isometrics so they preserve muscle. What? Preserve muscle? What are you talking about, dude?
And I'm inclined to think that it has more to do with nervous system and possibly even proprioception and some of just how our pain tolerance can contribute to muscle growth. That's really early stuff, and I don't...
Proprioception and pain tolerance when it comes to muscle growth. Oh, yeah, great, yeah. Well, you could say isometric can definitely, if you stand there with books on your arms, right? On both of your hands, stand up with a book on your head and two books with your arms hanging out. Let's see how much pain we can take by doing that. And stand on one leg at the same time, isometrically. Yeah, really, that's really intelligent. Yeah, okay.
I want to speak out of turn, but the point is that perhaps dealing with pain...
Yeah, I know, dealing with pain. You know what's painful? Going to school, your slave food, your slave job, your slave school, your slave wage, man, that's all very painful. That's why teachers, they love to exude pain on you. You know what the first thing they do? They stand you up and they used to put two books on either ends of your hands isometrically to see how much pain you could take. Do you understand me? To exude pain on you. These are how should I put it? Humans are very smart when it comes to pain. Trust me, they love to inflict pain on humans. They've been doing it for centuries, you dumbass.
In a constructive way.
Have you ever been on a fucking stretch rack before? Hey, stretch-mediated hypertrophy. Yeah, they have stretch racks for that. Guess what they did? They used to put people on stretch racks and stretch the fuck out of them. Get it? Let's see how much pain you could take by stretching your muscles. Whoa, let me see. Let's see how much pain we could take with this guy. Let's put these sharp objects. If his hands come down holding these two metal balls, they'll stab right through his hand. Get it? Isometrically.
Could allow us to bust through these barriers. That's why progressive overload and proximity to failure works. It's like muscle growth is rewarded to the person that can endure pain and get their brain right.
Muscle growth is rewarded to people that can go through pain, bro. That's like the stupidest thing I ever heard. Muscle damage, you don't really get pain. You wake up with in the morning. There's like some DOMs there, a little soreness for a couple of days. There's just some stiffness and soreness, but I'm not really feeling a lot of pain. You know what I mean? But That's going to give me pain when I don't get gains and I do stupid shit like isometric training or fucking mediated stretching, bro. Get it? I'm not born in the medieval times, bro. Get it? I'm not into that.
Endure that pain. Isometrics, there's
Endure that pain.
no better way to endure pain. If you've never experienced
Yeah, there's no other way to endure pain. Isometrics are amazing. Let's all go out and endure pain, see if we can magically build a muscle when meanwhile it's not going to build you fuck all.
true pain working out, try doing isometrics. It's a relatively safe way to
Yeah, if you like some true pain, try isometrics, but that's all it's going to give you, pain. It's not associated with myofibrillar hypertrophy. Get it? Isometric, not associated myofibrillar. It will give you pain. Now, but here's the thing. If you're doing eccentric exercise and your arm is sticking out, that would be isometric, pulling on the weight. There would be maybe some fiber splitting. I don't know. I can't even tell you. Maybe yes, maybe no. Who the fuck cares? The most damage you're going to get is eccentrically. That's all I can tell you. Okay, dude?
reduce that pain. So I think it might also train you.
I don't know. If you're going to a gym because you want to exude pain, then you really have to check yourself in psychologically and find out why.
To feel safer in certain positions. So if you were to do an isometric contraction in a wall sit at a low level or low squat, maybe it's going to train you to
That shit.
get the nervous system to turn those muscles on a little bit more.
Well,
Again,
sure.
I'm not an expert there, but I've seen it firsthand.
He's not an expert there either. See, he wasn't an expert over there. He's not an expert over here. What is he an expert in? Get it? You understand me? I know. Exuding pain isometrically.
So now we've talked about these 6 different ways of building muscle.
Sure.
Really the 3 pathways.
These six ways of building muscle, none of them build muscle except for one way: myofibrillar growth, muscle damage. That's what builds muscle.
Right? The mechanical breakdown, the sarcoplasmic, which I'm
Look, there's only one thing that builds muscle: eccentric exercise. That's it.
most excited about, and the metabolic. So how do we all layer these? Remember, okay, we're going to do occasional classical breakdown, or fundamentally classical breakdown with our typical hypertrophy training, 2-week volume sprints, so we get that glycogen supercompensation and we get all that. Then we're going to do periods of time after that,
And then we're going to do 2 weeks of glycogen training, and then we're going to do isometric, whatever.
where we go maybe a week or so of really fast metabolic training, where we're
metabolic
not doing
training,
cardio
yeah,
in between sets, but we're moving quickly between sets,
Sure.
not focusing on the proximity to failure so
So I get it. So to get to our
much as we're
to get to our destination to Mexico, we're gonna take the bicycle. First, we're gonna do a marathon running, and then we're gonna take the bicycle, and then we're gonna take the car, and then we're gonna take the train, and then at the end, we're finally gonna take the airplane to get there. Okay, I get it. Yeah, okay.
focusing on the burn, right?
Yeah, the
That's
burn.
what we're really
Yeah,
after with those.
Yeah.
And then we're occasionally adding in the stretch-mediated hypertrophy in our given workout.
And then we're adding the stretch-mediated hypertrophy, bro.
That's doing 1 or 2 exercises where we're really focusing on stretch, getting that out there as much as we can to get that induced response.
In that induced response, lifting light weights, yes. Yeah, okay, Mr. DeVoer.
I'll see you in the next episode where we talk a little bit more about some of the mistakes, but also why you're not building muscle.
Yeah, this is why none of you are building muscle and you're making mistakes. Watching people like Thomas DeLauer. Get it, man? Getting to your destination, taking a donkey. I'll see you in the next one. Touch, think about that, like, subscribe, support the channel. This was the stupidest video I have ever I've ever reacted to in my entire life, bro.
Independent of just these pathways. See you.
Yeah, independent of these pathways. Okay, dude. I'll see you in the next one, friends. I gotta go. This is stupid.